Hi everybody. Today we're going to be talking about selection. My name's Mary.
Jenny. Laura.
Gary.
And Jackie.
Can I make this now? So selection is a very standard pattern, beginning with the initial screening interview and concluding with the final employment decision. One way to conceptualize thinking selection is imagining each step as a hurdle, and if the applicant continues to go over each hurdle, they eventually will get the job. Each step is, Selection process is composed of steps, each of which provides decision makers with information that will help them predict whether an applicant is going to be good for the employment position. I'm going to be talking about the first 4 steps in the selection process. So it will be the initial screening, completing the application form, pre-employment tests, and the conditional job offer. So first is the initial screening. So typically you would start out with the screening inquiries and screening interviews. This is a company's effort in recruiting to be successful. That way they have a pool of potential candidates. Some questions that you can ask would be whether the applicant meets the minimum age set by law, but you can't ask them their date of birth or ask them for proof. Oh, mine is going so much slower. For screening interview, first cut job interview weeds out all the applicants except for the best qualified. They typically pass the survivors onto a person who will do the final decision-making process. Employment screening interviews can be conducted on phone, over webcam, or in person. Live interviews typically are either at a neutral meeting place or at the employment center itself. Completing the application, company-specific employment form used to generate specific information the company wants. So this way it's a quick step seeing if you're going to be a good cut or a good fit for the employment position. Applications, typically referrals account for between 30 and 50% of all U.S. hires. Applications obtain the information that a company wants and compares them to their needs and see if you're going to be a good fit. For new and you, AIC companies, that's where I interned this summer. I was actually referred to the president of AIC companies, and that's how I got my internship, through a referral through my cousin. It was pretty cool. Some key issues in completing the application form. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1991 were subsequent amendments. Executive orders and court rulings and other legislation have made it illegal to legal discriminate on the basis of sex, race, color, religion, national origin, disability, and age. Weighted applications are just applications like in a scale. So this compares like your previous job history to the wants and needs of the company now. The application serves as another hurdle. If they get past this form of selection, they can succeed in getting the job that they want. Successful applications, they provide relevant information for predicting job success and is supported across a broad range of jobs. This is so long. Pre-employment testing. This is work sampling and assessment centers evaluate the ability in actual jobs. So this is just a quick test that you can take beforehand to make sure that you're a good fit for the company and that you have the same needs and wants. New and you, again, AIC companies. Even though I was referred and had gotten the internship, I still had to take the same employment test that all the other employees had to take before entering the position. Comprehensive interviews, a selection device used to obtain in-depth information about the candidate. You can do this by interviewing by HR, senior managers, or potential supervisors. Disney is actually a big provider of that, where they pass around an employee. They do multiple interviews before they're actually hired. Areas such as assessing a candidate's motivation, values, and ability is a good way to assess if they are a good fit for the company. Next, I'm going to introduce Laura, who's going to talk about the conditional job offer background and investigation, medical or physical examination, and the permanent job offer.
Okay, so as Mary said, I'm basically going to continue on with the selection process. So right now, you've just initially gotten the extended job offer, so you're pretty happy once I did that, you're excited. You get the extended job offer. So that's considered the conditional job offer. It's actually a tentative job offer that becomes permanent after certain conditions are met. So basically, they have to verify, go through screenings to make sure all of the pre-employment before the start date is completed. So the first one is background investigations. That's references, former employment, educational accomplishments, legal status to work in the U.S., credit references, and then online searches. So the first one is references. Oh wait, actually, I'm sorry, Jacob. Back for a little bit. I actually want to talk about the importance of why you would want to do background screenings. Like, why would you want to waste your money? Why would you want to waste your time on doing that? So basically, it's just to clarify and make sure that you're doing, verifying all of what they said during the interview. So for references, first off, just little tips that I would want to, that if I were going to be doing references, I would want to make sure that the employee, you know what their relationship is. So, okay. So former employment, that's when you go back and you talk to the past and prior employee or employer of the past candidate and make sure that they're actually telling the truth when they're saying that they work there. And you also want to see, maybe you can get the performance appraisals from them. Educational accomplishment, that's as easy as just getting their transcripts, maybe contacting the admissions office. And this is actually what an I-9 form looks like. Currently where I intern, this is what I actually took a screenshot. This is one of the forms that every employee needs to fill out. This is just to ensure that they're eligible to work in the U.S. Just a personal point, my parents are actually from the UK originally, and they moved here and started working. So during their job searches, they needed to make sure that their green card's up to date. That's actually what a green card looks like. Credit reference. So if I'm hiring for the CFO, I'm going to make sure that they have good credit. I don't want to risk having problems with the account if they're clearly not good at managing money. So this is something that you definitely want to consider doing. Another personal point, I work for a pharmaceutical company named Pentec Health. Every time we get a new hire, I actually do a Medicare fraud check on them just to make sure that they're definitely not having any Medicare fraud, because that's definitely not something that you would want to have for people in the pharmaceutical company. And then of course, you can go online, search the candidate, see what you can get. If they're suing another employee for discrimination, you're definitely going to want to know about it. And then, and for all of the background screenings that I just discussed, Pentec Health, where I work, we actually run a CSS, so we outsource to another company to get the background screenings. This is actually what it looks like. So. Okay, flip together. And then medical and physical examinations is another thing that you want to do prior to having the person start working there. You want to just make sure that you're doing that. If, let's say, only to be completed after a job offer has been given, you also want to ensure that all employees are getting the same thing. So if I'm having Harry get a medical examination, you want to make sure that Mary gets one as well. And also make sure to keep it confidential when you're completing these medical exams. An example would be firefighters. You want to maybe test them on their physical ability and make sure that they're due to show that they're fit for duty, which would be climbing a ladder, lugging a water-filled 4-inch hose. And then drug screening. So this is another really important thing that you would definitely want to consider during the hire date, before the hire date. There's a lot of reasons why companies would want to do it, some being workplace safety. And this is another point from where I work at Pentec Health. This is another thing that I do where I make sure all drug screenings are completed. We actually outsource the Quest diagnosis. They're everywhere, so that's like the perfect place for us. And then you can officially, after you've completed all of your background, can finally do the real dance that you got your job. And now Gary's going to talk. He's going to be discussing interviewing.
I'm going to be discussing the interview process, interview habits, and types of interviews. So the interview process. Applicants who pass initial screening application forms and required tests typically have a comprehensive interview. You may be interviewed by a human resources manager, senior management, a potential supervisor, or even your colleagues. At some organizations, applicants are interviewed by multiple individuals. The interview process allows the company to address certain areas not addressed on the application form or in certain tests. The interview process addresses a candidate's motivation, their values, ability to work under pressure, attitude, and most importantly, their ability to fit in within the organizational culture, which is an important thing. So the importance of the interview process. Many candidates who fail at a workplace do so because they don't fit in within the organizational culture. This point stresses why the interview process is so important. Some people don't fit in and they don't last long at a company because of that. Skills and aptitude get the candidate in the door, but how well they adapt frequently determines how long the candidate will actually stay within the organization. So the interview effectiveness. Interviewing is often left to managers with little experience or training on how to conduct an interview, and they might ask inappropriate questions. If you don't know what to look for, it will result in a candidate who is a poor fit for the company. Some bad interview habits consist of asking off-topic questions, spending more time talking rather than listening to the candidate, and skipping reference checks, or you're so desperate to fill a position that you might fill it rather than picking a good candidate for the job. And some good interview habits are preparing a standard set of questions to ask all applicants to avoid discrimination, review the application and resume before meeting the candidate, and open the interview by putting the applicant at ease and providing a brief review of the topics to be discussed. Some more good interview habits are ask your questions and listen carefully, take a few notes on the responses, close the interview by telling the applicant what is going to happen next, and write your evaluation on the applicant while the interview is still fresh in your mind. Some unacceptable interview questions are asking about the number of children someone has, who's going to babysit, where are you originally from, or do you have any job disabilities? Some more appropriate, acceptable interview questions would be, what hours and days can you work? Are there any specific times that you cannot work? Are you legally eligible for employment in the U.S.? And can you perform the duties for the job that you're applying for? So I've had numerous different jobs growing up and working in retail, the food industry, and for the federal government. And while I was hired for retail jobs and the food industry, I went through the normal interview process. And I was interviewed by the managers and watched safety videos. But ironically, when I was hired for an intern for the federal government, I didn't go through the interview process. My paperwork was processed and background checks were conducted, but I never had an interview. I simply received an email just said I was selected for the position. And although I was happy I didn't have to go through the nerve-wracking process of the interview, it would have been a smart idea for them to conduct the interview because to avoid some of the pitfalls I previously mentioned in my other slides, like culture. And I didn't know anything about the culture before my first day other than what I read online. If I didn't fit in, they would have wasted a lot of time and money processing all my paperwork and conducting background checks. This would have been a waste of time and money for them. So 6 different types of interviews. We have the standard common interview questions such as tell me about yourself. The second one's behavioral. Focuses on the past employers, can attempt to predict the future with questions such as describe a time when you didn't get along with a coworker. Situational, concentrates on future performance rather than past performance. Interviewer gives you a problem and asks you how you would deal with it. Employers want to know how you would likely solve a problem. Case, usually in the consulting industry, and focuses on how you would solve a specific business issue. They can include quantitative questions that show the interviewer how you think. Fifth one is presentation. Some interviewers may challenge you with a business issue and ask you to present the solution to one or more employees. And the sixth one is panel, which is you may be interviewed by as many as 5 people at once. Each person may have a list of questions to ask you. And next, Jackie's going to discuss interviewer biases in selection and techniques to eliminate interview bias.